At last, we get into the E36 Compact. It's pushed its way to the top of the list. Admittedly, it had to pull a virtual catastrophic coolant failure to do that. And as you know, BMWs of this age do tend to have issues with their cooling systems. We already knew there were issues. It never got up to temperature. So we knew the thermostat was probably not quite doing its proper job. Also, it was noisy at the front. We're not sure whether it's the pulley or it's the cooling pump. And it could be one or the other. And as the cooling pump's got a few miles on it, we knew we were going to change that. However, let's get to the catastrophic coolant problem. Not having any coolant can be pretty catastrophic. And we noticed that the heater had stopped working. So checking the coolant, found there was virtually none in the tank. Now we knew some work had been done on the cooling system in the past because there was definitely receipts for some new coolant from about 2 or 3 years ago. And looking around now can see some new pipes, but there's the odd one or two that look like they've had dodgy repairs, so we want to address them. So in this video we're going to do the cooling pump, the thermostat, give it a flush through, and we're going to put new hoses at the top. It should be running like a good one by the time. Let's get the bonnet open, start it up. You can have a quick listen to some of these noises. It does sound nasty, but while we were videoing that part, funnily enough, we could feel a little bit of a spray of coolant. So I'm going to start it, I'm going to get a tissue and just go about and see if I can see where it's coming from exactly, because it's not obvious. Well, definitely getting some spatter over here. So what we're going to do is whip these top covers off so that we can actually see a bit clearer. And top tip for a compact E36 owner, handy little space to keep your spare coolant if you need to keep topping it up. Come on, you bugger, there you go. I've seen this, what I think might be a temporary repair before, and I have got a new top hose to replace it. I was hoping that was the problem, but it doesn't appear to be. So let's start the engine up again, and then we'll see if we can spot anything. Starting the engine again always makes sense. Don't have everything that's hanging around. Although we spotted something over there, just look at this. One of those rarities in automotive mechanicking, a smoking gun. We've actually got water or coolant flicking out. You can actually see it's wet down here. So it's either coming from the thermostat housing, which is plastic and they are known to crack, so I think it could be that, or from the water pump. The best bit about this, those are two parts I was going to replace anyway, so it couldn't be better. So we've even got a little puddle of water forming at the bottom, so it should actually be easy to find once we start taking these parts out. And the observant amongst you might say, I wouldn't reuse that belt. Well, I had no intention of. And as the aircon isn't working, I'm thinking of doing a simple aircon delete for the moment by just leaving the aircon belt off. To give us room, I'm going to remove the fan. Luckily on the compact it has an electric fan that's built into the shroud here. If you were doing this on a Z3 or another car that uses the M44 engine, it might have a viscous fan on it, which is a bit more of a challenge to take off. Hopefully this isn't too much of a problem. 8mm by the way. Now before we drain the coolant, I'm going to do something counterintuitive. I'm going to start the engine again a couple of times. It's got that rattly noise. I want to try and diagnose it. So the first thing we're going to do is snip off the AC belt. Start it, see if the noise is gone. I suspect not. Next thing is take off the aux belt, start it. I know the water pump won't be working, so we won't run it for long, but if the noise stops, then it says it's likely to be one of the items we're replacing that's an issue. The only other two possible contenders is the alternator and the steering pump. It isn't that kind of a noise. I don't think it's going to be these, and that's really nice. That's fine too, but we'll start it up just to prove the point. Steering pump feels alright. Alternator. That's a bit noisy, but not horrific. Oh. Wow, that sounds none too groovy. So it seems conclusive that it's the water pump that's the issue, which is great because I was going to replace it anyway. I must comment though, 4-pot in one of these cars, how much room you have to play with at the front. It's really good. Anyway, we'll get the front raised up, let it cool off a bit, get the coolant out of it. Well, that wasn't that hard. Right, we'll keep our eye on it, but we're going to drain the coolant.
You're missing badly. Look under the car. And you're missing again.
Where's it bloody coming out?
Everywhere.
Not to worry, we can mop up. While the coolant's pouring out, I'm going to take the two top hoses off. Might as well let them fall on the floor as well before I mop up. And now for the bottom hose. Oh dear. To be honest, I've never known it not go like this. Try and get OEM spec, and preferably from similar suppliers who actually provide BMW first time around. Hopefully you can see most of the part numbers there of the things that I'm using. It also makes sense where you can to see if the part you've got, new one, looks similar to the old one. Because I have had it where the people on the dispatch send you out things in boxes that are not actually as labelled. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the thermostat. The other advantage of putting the part near to where it's supposed to go, besides checking that it looks the same, is you can also have a look at where the mounts might be. I must admit I wanted to get an aluminium one of these, but they don't seem to exist for this engine. And there's 4 10mm headed bolts on this. Right, we're on to the last one now. Now, it's worth noting that this cover is held on by the same size bolts or machine screws. What you don't want to do is go and undo all of them. So hopefully, and it does seal quite loose to be fair. Let's see if we can see any smoking gun as we're coming in. That's the actual thermostat coming out with it, which it doesn't seem to be fastened to this housing anymore. Not sure what's gone on there, but it doesn't look happy, does it? Well, there's a smoking gun with regard to the thermostat. As you can see, this is in 2 pieces. And if you look at the original, or the new one, it's supposed to be held on those 2 tangs there. Well, this hasn't actually got tangs where they're supposed to be. So that's why the thermostat was just staying open. Now also, I noticed when I took it off, the seal, there's lots and lots of gunge on the outside. And looking at the front of the engine, which I'll show you in a minute, that also has a lot of gunge. And I think this might have been leaking from around here for quite a while, and it's just got worse recently rather than anything else. Looking at it, there's a lot of crud. Next thing I'm going to look at is the water pump. So let's have a quick look at it, and then we'll have a look in the engine bay at where it goes. The water pump's behind this pulley, so I have to take the pulley off first. Now, obviously these are going to be a bit of a nuisance to get out, but they're not into alloy, so I'm going to use the impact one to take them out. It is plastic, so don't get too aggressive. There we go. 4 machine screws and a little bit of wrestling, I think. Let's see how it works out. I'm a little bit surprised to find that these are Allen-headed screws into here. A bigger one and 3 smaller ones. I think it's a 6 and 3/5. In the past I've always seen hex-headed ones, and these can be a fight to get out. If you want a good laugh, go and look at our M40 video. Virtually the same kind of water pump, and it wasn't for coming out. Right, I would, with Allen heads, like to use an impact driver, but I haven't got the right impact ones and I can't even get them in properly. So I'm having to do this the old-fashioned way. To give myself a bit more leverage, socket of the right size. Wish me luck. Oh, well that one's come out. Had to use a different size socket. Oh, that gave up really easy. Probably snapped. And again. And that bottom one's a bit of a fiddle. Yes. Right, well they're all loose. I'll twiddle them out now. I'll take the screws out now, but we're not out of the woods. This will not just fall off. or if it does, there's something seriously wrong. To get the water pump out, they actually give you an aid. If you look at the new one, you might notice that there are 2 threaded holes, and there's threaded holes on the one in there. And the idea is you actually put a machine screw of the right thread, and the ones from the thermostat are ideal for this, but you don't want to damage them. Thread them in, and you drive them in a little bit at a time and it pulls it out. That's the theory. We have had it, and I refer you back to our M40 engine video where these snap off. You've got to remember these holes haven't been used for a long time. The hit, a surprising problem. I've got the machine screw for the top, and I was going to use the same at the bottom, but you might be able to see there's a boss on the water pump there, which actually means I can't possibly put one of these into that. So what I am going to do is I'm going to use Allen-headed bolt and try to use this as well. This isn't ideal, and I'm going to give it loads of lubrication to give it its best shot. The lugs broke on the bottom one. Well, that's exactly what I didn't want to happen, but I have had it happen to me before. Now we need to get a bit medieval on this and hope that that works. Well, it gave up. While he's cleaning out the gasket faces, I'll change the idler pulley. Now this is another of those internet conundrums. Half the people say left hand thread, half the people say right hand thread. For this particular one, my money is on left hand thread. So I'm going to set up the impact gun and we'll see. Left hand thread. Definitely left hand thread. However, the new one that I've bought has a different centre, and no matter what we do, it won't position it in the same place as this, so it's obviously wrong. So I'm going to put the old one back in. I'll have to change it again at some point in the future. Let's hope I remember. The water pump has a big O-ring, but I always feel it's a good idea to put a little smear of RTV all the way around where it actually seals against the block. We do a final tighten of these when the belt's on. Around then. Around this. Just push that down. Excellent. And now for the other top hose, and I thought that was a bodged repair on the other one. Instead it was a standard part that was broken. For everyone who thought we weren't going to tighten those pulley bolts. There we go. And I'm sure some of you will spot the performance upgrades on this elephant's trunk. After the scrabble to put the under tray back on, that's the job done, apart from putting coolant back in, bleeding it, getting it up to temperature, making sure it all works and doesn't leak. For those of you that are doing this job themselves, all the M6 bolts and screws that went in are done to 10 Newton meters and the M8s are done to 22 Newton meters. You do have to be careful screwing in to aluminium. Right. According to what I can discover, it's supposed to take about 6.5 litres. I actually expect I'll end up putting less than that in. I'm going to run it for a week or two, drain it again and then refill it. This system doesn't seem to have been done as recently as I thought. The coolant that was in didn't look as good as I'd hoped, so I suspect it had really only been topped up in the past. You'll have seen I did give it a good flush out, and what I've got is exactly the same as on receipts from the past with this car. It's even the same brand. This is not BMW OEM stuff, but this is the stuff for modern aluminium engines that also have iron and seals and everything. So it is the right stuff for this kind of an engine. I'm also going to use deionized water. You don't want to just use tap water into your engine. It can cause all sorts of things with any contaminants that are in it. Deionized, at least it's pure. The optimum mix with this is 33%. So as I'm looking eventually to end up with about 6.5 litres, and I don't really want to waste any, what I'll do is I'll put a litre of deionized water, then half a litre of this, put it in, another litre and half a litre. Once I get to about 4.5, which would be 3 lots, I suspect I'll be getting near to it saying it needs bleeding. which is if it's gone a bit darker and a bit noisier. We've had a power cut due to high winds, but I don't think it'll stop us finishing the job. Now you may get to this point and think, oh, why is it full? What you really need to do as well is just tweak the bleeder open so it lets it all run down into it. Now, I've got 4.5 litres in it, and I said it'd be about that and it'd start, you know, looking like it's full. What we've done is we've made it so that the car's raised at the front, which is the best thing to do when filling it, because not only are you filling the radiator and the block, you've got to fill the heater as well. So I think we're getting to the point now where we'll actually set the car running and squeeze the hoses and keep putting more in. It's supposed to take 6.5 litres. I reckon if we get another litre in, we'll probably be doing well. Oh, and it's important to have the heater actually on the red so that it's going through the heater matrix. Well, after that panic, thinking we had a leaking hose or a leaking radiator, it actually turned out, because we got the bleeder open, it was a little bit trickling down and out from the bottom. And because we didn't notice it soon enough, it formed quite a bubble. Anyway, had the airbox off, checked everything down there, tightened the bleeder, not doing it now. That job worked out really well. The temperature gauge now is rock steady in the middle. I am absolutely thrilled. I've looked under the bonnet, no leaks whatsoever, and a look in the header tank, there's no discoloration to the coolant yet, so maybe I won't give it another flush. And of course, all the parts we've used will be in the description, apart from that pulley, which actually turned out to be the wrong one. If this has been useful to you, give us a like. If you're interested in what happens next, and we have got some big plans for this car, subscribe. But thanks very much for watching.